Welcome if you've just joined us to the Scottish Polluter Awards. Despite the rhetoric around climate change, the UK government still backs big polluters in the North Sea, such as the disastrous proposal for the Cambo Oil Field. Our North Sea Numpty Award acknowledges polluters continuing to leach hydrocarbons in the North Sea. Now let's introduce our nominees.
First up, it's our friends BP. BP have been involved in the North Sea ever since companies started drilling deep for hydrocarbons. Contrary to their recent virtue signalling and waffle around net zero, they sit on the North Sea's largest oil field and continue to obtain new exploration contracts. Next up are the masters of the shilling. Welcome, Oil and Gas UK. When Greenpeace occupied climate-wrecking BP infrastructure, Oil and Gas UK's Gareth Wynne bravely stepped forward to defend our need for the sector. When an employment lawyer commented on the general stripping back of employment rights in the sector, here was Oil and Gas UK's Alex Thorne to proclaim that they don't recognise those claims. Oil and Gas UK deserve huge credit for their tireless shilling of the North Sea oil and gas sector. Next, another legendary polluter, Shell. Oil and Gas Shell have been involved in North Sea operations since back in the day. They own the Brent field, which as early as 2008 had already produced a staggering 2 billion barrels of oil and 5.7 trillion cubic feet of gas. Shell has also been a pioneer in preventing anything effective being done to slow the climate catastrophe. They filed protest blocking injunctions against activists from XR Scotland and Greenpeace as recently as 2019. Fourth, it's the lesser-known entity, Chrysaor. At the time of voting, Chrysaor was the biggest North Sea private equity firm, as well as the biggest producer of oil in the North Sea. Since then, Chrysaor and Premier Oil have merged to become Harbour Energy, a listed company. In April this year, Harbour Energy described itself as, quote, producing over 200,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day from the North Sea and Southeast Asia, unquote. At the end of 2020, they operated 14 fields across the UK, held 11 licenses across 18 blocks in Norway, with total operations emitting just under 1 million tonnes of CO2 per year. At the time of the merger, the partnership of Chrysaor with Premier Oil was set to see them become the biggest hydrocarbon producer in the British sector in the North Sea. Finally, it's the perennial gas bags, INEOS. In only 5 years, giant frackers INEOS have become a major player in the North Sea oil and gas sector and seem committed to extending its life and reducing ours for decades to come. They are set to invest £500 million to keep the Forties pipeline system in operation for at least the next 20 years. Back to you, Kat.
I can feel the heat, such a competitive field, but there can only be one winner. And the winner of the North Sea Numpty Award is BP. They just picked aggressive fracker and sports washer extraordinaires INEOS. And now over to BP or not BP to accept the award on BP's behalf.
BP or not BP, that was the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the world to squeeze the last drops of oil from a dying planet, or to heed the climate crisis and by just quitting, end it. BP or not BP are delighted to accept this award of North Sea Numpty on behalf of BP. We can think of nobody more deserving. We want to congratulate BP on their decades of persistence to strike oil off the coast of Shetland, helping to guarantee a future for climate change. BP's legacy in the world of oil is impressive, claiming responsibility for the Deepwater Horizon explosion, killing 11 workers and releasing almost 200 million gallons of crude oil into the ocean. BP openly admit that their business plan will push us well into runaway climate change, but they will not be deterred, courageously continuing to extract our natural resources, tar sands, drilling in Alaska, with no regard for workers' rights or human rights. But they don't just excel in extraction. BP are also world leaders in greenwash, offering tiny amounts of funding in exchange for priceless publicity. They splash their logo all over the National Polluter Awards, the British Museum and the Scottish Ballet. It's a wonder the ballerinas don't slip with that oily mess all over their production. BP or Not BP is a UK-wide network of performers and activists highlighting BP's crimes and kicking BP out of our arts. We've successfully won campaigns to remove BP as a sponsor from the International Festival and the Edinburgh Science Festival, and after taking over their exhibition space with drama and song for 3 years running, the Scottish National Portrait Gallery have said that they will no longer host the National Portrait Awards while BP are a sponsor. The next step? Making Scotland's ballet free from BP's oily grip. Thank you again for awarding BP the North Sea Numpty. We're delighted to accept on their behalf.